Okay, so today we're jumping into a source that makes a pretty explosive claim that a simple $5 device with literally no moving parts can permanently cut an average home's electricity bill by anywhere from 30 to 50%. We're not talking about slowing things down a bit. We're talking about taking a massive chunk out of it. Let's unpack how they say this is even possible. Yep, 50%. That's the number at the very heart of this whole thing. The material we're digging into today alleges that you can build a simple, passive device that could wipe out up to half your monthly electricity costs. Now, that's a huge claim. So right away, you've got to ask, how on earth do they even begin to back that up? And this is where it gets interesting. This is the core of their argument. They say the science isn't new. It isn't experimental. The quote is pretty blunt. It works. It has always worked. So this whole story isn't framed as some new discovery, but more like the rediscovery of knowledge that got buried. And that, right there, is the big one, isn't it? If a simple, dirt-cheap solution to crazy high energy bills has been around for over a century, why isn't it in every single house? Why wouldn't electricians be installing these, or utility companies be promoting them? That's the mystery we're going to try and piece together today, based on this one particular narrative. So to find the answer, the story takes us way back to the dawn of the electrical grid, and to a name everyone knows, Nikola Tesla. Apparently, he was obsessed with a very specific kind of electrical waste that the rest of the industry was just kind of ignoring. And this concept is the key to everything. It's called reactive power. You know, the easiest way to think about it is like the foam on a beer. You pay for a full pint, right? But you only actually drink the liquid beer, not the foam. Well, Tesla supposedly noticed that things with motors, your appliances, draw in this foam energy to build up magnetic fields. And even though that energy gets pushed right back to the grid, your meter has already spun forward, and boom, you've been charged for it. And the case they're making here is that this wasn't just some dusty, forgotten patent. The source points to proof that this principle was used for decades. You've got British factories in the 1920s saving up to 40%, all the way to the US Army using it to cut costs. The argument is really simple. The same physics that saves an army base a ton of money, it works exactly the same way in your house. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this alleged waste actually happens inside your home's wiring, and more importantly, how you end up footing the bill for it. So inside your house, you basically have two kinds of appliances. On one side, you have resistive loads. Think of a toaster or an old-school light bulb. They're super simple and efficient. They turn pretty much all the electricity they pull into heat or light. But then you have inductive loads. This is anything with a motor, your air conditioner, your fridge, your fans. These are the devices that pull in that reactive power, that foam, which according to this account is what makes your meter over-report how much energy you've actually put to work. In this visual, it really drives the point home. The source calls it the reactive power penalty. That first bar is the electricity your stuff actually uses to do its job, cooling your food or spinning a fan. But that second, taller bar, that's what your meter actually records, and that's what you get a bill for. The gap between them, that's the reactive power you end up paying for but never truly use. So here's the crucial part. How do you fix it? Well, the text says a simple little component called a capacitor can act like a tiny local battery just for this reactive power. So instead of your AC having to pull that foam energy all the way from the power plant and getting you billed for it, it just grabs it from the capacitor that's sitting right there. And the result? Your meter only measures the real power you're using, and so it spins slower. Which brings us right back to that huge question. If the science is this simple and the fix is this straightforward, why isn't this in every home? Well, this part of the story argues it all comes down to an absolutely staggering amount of money. First, let's just talk about scale for a second. The global electricity utility industry, according to the document we're looking at, is a $3 trillion a year business. And that business model relies completely on customers paying for every single unit that their meter clocks. Now, look at this number. This is the source's estimate for the annual revenue that U.S. utility companies alone could lose if every homeowner installed this device. $96 billion a year. The author doesn't just call this a problem, they call it an extinction-level event for the current business model. So, what was the game plan here, according to the source? The claim is that the knowledge wasn't banned, it was just redirected. Big industrial clients, whose savings would be massive and impossible to hide, they were actually encouraged to use this tech. But for you and me, the residential customers, the message was the total opposite, that the savings are tiny or that the devices are all scams. By just muddying the waters with confusing jargon and pointing to a few cheap, junky products, the entire valid principle was supposedly discredited for the average person. And then there's this other layer. The source highlights a piece of legislation from 1978. One of its quiet side effects was that it took the data about reactive power right off of your residential bill. You're billed in kilowatt hours, not in a way that would ever let you see this reactive penalty. The problem basically became invisible. Okay, so enough about the problem. Let's talk about the fix. The source doesn't just point out an issue, it lays out a step-by-step guide for what it claims is the solution. Here are the basic steps the source lays out. First, you figure out which of your appliances have big motors. Second, you buy the right parts, specifically run capacitors, which cost just a few bucks each. Third, you install them at your main electrical panel. Now, let me be super clear here, and the sources too. This means working with your home's main electrical system. If you aren't 100% comfortable and knowledgeable about what you're doing, this is absolutely a job for a licensed electrician. Finally, you measure the results yourself just by tracking your bills. And when you lay it all out like this, the claims are, well, they're pretty wild. A total cost of under $5, installation time of just a couple hours, a lifespan of 20 to 30 years with zero maintenance. If this is all accurate, the return on that investment would be, almost unbelievable for a home improvement project. And the whole argument is that this knowledge didn't just disappear, it just went underground. The source points to old-school internet forums in Germany, an Australian university study that actually measured a 31% reduction, the fact that it's common practice for electricians in places like the Philippines and Thailand, and even a detailed forum post by a retired engineer in Ohio who documented his 33% savings with copies of his actual bills. This quote right here just perfectly wraps up the whole idea. The position they take is that your high electric bill isn't some law of physics you just have to accept. No, it's the result of a specific mechanical arrangement, an arrangement of meters and billing practices, and that arrangement can be changed by anyone who understands what's really going on. So the source ends by basically saying, hey, the secret's out, the vault is open, and it leaves us with this really provocative question. Now that this information is out there and accessible, what happens next? Does it change how we look at that little spinning meter on the side of our house? That's definitely a question worth thinking about.
If you find this video helpful, please be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Help us grow this channel by sharing with your friends who might need this hack. Thanks for watching.